So hello everyone. So this is a session where I'll try to give answers to your questions that you have posted in the Google form that I have circulated a couple of days back. Most of the questions pertain to prelims, and then there are some questions pertaining to mains as well. The questions regarding mains will be addressed in subsequent sessions. So let me in this week let me handle at least 10 of your questions so that you get some clarity on how to proceed further with your prelims preparation, right? And when I went through those questions, I could actually understand your insecurities. I can understand your emotional concerns, your confidence issues, your inability to understand whether you're going in the right direction or not, right? So these are all some things that's bothering you, as I can understand from the questions, right? Many of you have really asked wonderful questions which really made me think as to what can actually be done, right? So that's when I felt I shouldn't simply be giving you a list of books to read. I shouldn't be giving you what all areas, what all themes I have deciphered out of the syllabus sheet. That's all waste of time. You have enough of such videos on YouTube, right? Just go and type it on YouTube on what all themes to prepare for environment. You'll have at least 100 themes which these videos will give you. YouTubers will be giving you all of that, right? So I don't want to go and do a repetition of the same thing again. And moreover, let me also tell you something. I just tried typing your queries on artificial intelligence platforms like Grok, right? Because Grok is what I'm using these days. I feel it's really much better than ChatGPT. So so let's say this is your question. What you can find on the slide here is a question asked by a student. Just copied this, pasted in Grok, and I felt the answer was amazing, right? Grok gives you a list of books to read, how all you can compartmentalize the chapters, which all are the priority areas to focus, what is the nature of questions asked in civil service exam in the previous years, and in that basis which area should be covered. Everything is given in Grok. So I would simply want to avoid that as well. I would not be giving you any ideas about what topics and themes to prepare, right? But what I'll be dealing with is something that AI cannot deal. Okay, I'm going to go into the psychological issues, the emotional issues, your anxieties, your concerns that as a human being I was able to actually understand when I went through your question, right? So it is those issues which I thought I'll actually address. Let's start with the first question here. First question is, how do you improve your score in science and tech and science and tech and environment? What can you do about it, right? So this is the detailed question that was actually asked. So I'm primarily focusing on pre-storming test series. I'm able to get around 90 in subjects like polity, history, geography, but couldn't cross 60 in environment and science and tech. In my 2024 attempt, according to Vision IAS Key, I got 80 marks. How can I increase my score in environment and science and tech so that I can get more than 100 in this attempt? Well, let me tell you, what if I can easily suggest 5 different sources to prepare for science and tech and environment. But the problem is, even after preparing from all these sources, what if a similar performance repeats again this year as well? What if even in this year there isn't a significant jump in your science and tech and environment areas, right? And why do I feel that there is a possibility of this happening despite you studying? The reason is because these are questions of previous year, like just 2024 prelims question paper, right? So these are environment questions. So when I went through question number 15 to question number 30, they were environment, right? So when I went through these questions, I felt in this page 17, 18, 19, 20, there are 4 questions here, right? Commonly, what do? You go and read laws, Environment Protection Act, Biodiversity Act, right? So that's one common theme that you actually study from all your textbooks, number one. Second, most probably you will be reading and preparing from various sources, the recent species in news, important species, all that you prepare, right? Okay, so this question is based on that. This question is based on species, not the animal species, but plant species, right? And these are not even plant species in news. These are just common species like horse gram, soya bean, groundnut, all right? So what I'm simply trying to say is, question number 17 to 20, it is based on what you commonly actually study from your standard sources and compilations, right? Despite you studying, you can at the maximum get one question right out of these 4 questions, and that's question number 17, which is basically something to do with current affairs. I was able to simply get only question number 17 perfectly right. I cannot even touch 18, I couldn't touch 19 nor the 20th question, because there are just so many issues in these questions. But question number 17 is easy, because I remember last year there were occasions when I was able to actually come across this idea called as permanent chemicals, right? And I don't even know from where I had read that. It could be from newspaper, it could be from Twitter, it could be from WhatsApp. Some random source would have brought this to my attention. When I went through that, I was able to understand that these are chemicals which do not degrade at all for a very, very long period of time, right? So that it is in that context I was able to actually know something about polyfluoroalkyl substances. That just that exposure, that one day's exposure, nothing else. I don't remember reading it from anywhere else, right? Maybe the same news could have come to your attention through various sources. It could be through your academy handout material, your faculty classes, or your compilations could all brought this news to your attention. But I'm saying a person like me who have not been exposed to any of these sources would still be aware of this, right? And no matter what you read about species, no matter what you read about the different laws, you couldn't have got question number 18, 19, 20 correct, because question number 18 requires extreme precision. You cannot make any guesses here, and I do not have any shortcuts in my hand. I cannot simply give you, if there are 3 options you have eliminated, 2 options you have eliminated, just 2, just go for one. Most probably option B is always right. You know, these are the kind of wrong methods that are there on the internet. It may work, it may not work. Just because it clicks once doesn't mean it's a tested formula, right? So I wouldn't be attempting 18, I wouldn't be attempting 19, I wouldn't be attempting 20, which means that, and I was only studying these things as a part of my preparation, right? What do you actually study? You study about the different pollutants, you study about the different laws, all the different legislations in India governing forests, wildlife, biodiversity, etc., etc. Then you read a list of all the different species, correct? Despite doing all of that, I can actually get only one question out of 4 correct, and even getting this one question right doesn't actually require me to have read all these sources. But look at the next page, 30, 27, 38, 39. This is basically science and environment, right? Science and tech as well as environment questions, you find it here. Question number 27, 30, these are environment. 38, 39, these are science, right? And let me tell you, these are questions for which you don't even have to study anything. You don't even have to read any compilations or environment textbook or science textbook. Just playing around with English by your knowledge which you have gathered from preparation from other aspects of civil service exam. Let's say you have prepared history. When you read about history, you would have known about the impacts of Portuguese arrival in India. When Portuguese came, they were the ones who introduced cashew, papaya, right, chili, maize, corn, right, all of these, tomatoes, all of these were imported into India by the Portuguese, right? So it was in this context I was able to get question number 30 right. So cashew and papaya, I knew it was clearly not in the answer, right? And red sanders, I know where red sanders grows. Red sanders actually grows in the deep forests. So nobody would have introduced it and taken it to the deep interior forest and would have planted it. If at all it was introduced to India, it would have been introduced to areas where people live, so that commercial exploitation can actually happen, right? Why would red sanders, which actually grows deep interiors in Andhra Pradesh and in Tamil Nadu, right, why would such a tree species, why would it be introduced to India? That's just commonsensical thinking, right? It's an environment area. You don't even have to go and take a list of all the crops, all the species and start preparing them one by one. You only simply need to apply your commonsensical thinking here. Just with that, you will be able to get one right. Cashew and papaya have to be eliminated. One environment question is got right, right? So for the student who has asked me this question, how will I be able to improve my score in environment and science and tech? My answer is, it's not through extra reading. See, learning is always something that has to go on in parallel, but I'm simply saying, just suggesting you to learn more is not going to increase your scores. My concern otherwise is, were you able to get all these 4 questions right in the last year? If you are able to get these 4 questions last year correct, it means that there is nothing you have to worry about. Maybe the learning would have been lesser last year, this year it's going to improve, right? So you don't have to radically alter your preparation strategies, alright? So because you see question number 27, how many of them are considered distributed energy resources, right? Let's say nuclear power plant would not be distributed everywhere, right? But whereas you take batteries, you take fuel cells, you take rooftop solar panels, it's all distributed everywhere. Biomass generators, all small level energy production source. It's just a commonsensical thinking and nothing else. I have not read this term distributed energy resources anywhere in my past. Just looking at the question, I was able to apply logic that, oh yes, all these are sources of energy which are just prevalent everywhere, not concentrated one as a hydroelectric power plant or a thermal power plant. Instead of that, these are just prevalent everywhere, distributed. Simple English, nothing else, right? And I go for all four as right. Similarly, membrane bioreactors, I am very clear about how an RO machine works, and I know that it is the principle of osmosis which is actually used, right? So reverse osmosis which is actually used, and I know there is a membrane across which the water that needs to be made soft, all the minerals that have to be extracted out of it, the water is actually passed through the membrane, right? And I know membrane filters, these are all there in RO machines, just with that logic, nothing else, right? Why would membranes be used in drug delivery nanotechnologies? What membrane are we even talking about here, right? Vaccine production and membranes, I simply cannot even imagine why would membranes be used in vaccine. But membrane bioreactors, I can understand. Bioreactors could be some mechanisms, maybe using some organic material or using biological living beings so as to purify water. Anything could be the case. But I know membranes are used in treatment, water treatment use cases, right? Simple, just with this, nothing else. So what I am trying to say is, and the question number 38, I was not able to narrow it between option A and B, right? I know what is lift irrigation. You actually pump up water, store it, correct? But option A as well as option B looks very similar to each other, okay? In this kind of a case, I may take a risk or I may not even take a risk, but I was very clear in eliminating option C and option D. They are irrelevant, right? So it is either option A or B. Probably I would go for option B because I know the mechanism of how lift irrigation works, right? And lift irrigation need not be studied from an environment textbook. It need not even be studied from any compilation magazines. It is something that would have come somewhere in the newspaper. I think I have got exposed to lift irrigation from the advertisements I have seen in Hindu newspaper given by the former Telangana government, right? So that BRS party, Chandrasekhar Rao's party, right? So I think they have carried out a lot of lift irrigation schemes implementation. So that used to be given as big ads in Hindu newspaper on the front page. So when I've read that, I've come across lift irrigation. So understand, this is how a lot of people crack prelims, right? Except for the questions that are very bookish, like the questions from polity, right? And some questions from NCRTs out of asked in history. It's only that those questions that can be got right by reading more of the textbooks. And many of these questions from environment and science and tech are questions to be attempted with your extra awareness, with your wider awareness, with your commonsensical thinking, with just playing around with the question, right? See, these are questions which I am attempting only because the English makes sense to me. And remember, I am not even handling question number 18. Why? Because everything requires you to have factual awareness about it, right? I can understand the question, but I am simply not able to use any logic here. So I have to eliminate, avoid attempting this question, right? So to answer your question, keep strength. See, there are two ways of how you can actually look into this problem of yours. Assume that even this year, science and environment is not going to have witness any increase in marks. If that is the case, make sure you get one question more correct from polity, history and geography. That is a way of compensating for the deficiency in science and environment, right? You cannot simply follow somebody else's strategy because something else works for some person in improving their environment and science marks. It may not actually work for you, right? Each one of us we are made differently. So assume that even this year, science, environment might not work for you. UPSC can only slightly make questions difficult and it becomes difficult for you, right? And look at this. Question number 18, 19, 20, the similar nature of questions were never asked in the past. You can tell me flying fox was even asked 1 year in one particular previous year, but whether it is a vermin or not, to what extent will you read about flying fox, right? And is that the reason why it is kept under statement, does Indian flying fox feed on the blood of other animals, and is that the reason why it is called as a vermin? All these causation, correlationships are not so easy, right? You need to know exactly these two aspects. Even though flying fox was asked, I think long back, it was asked which of the following are bat varieties or something, and out of that, I think one of the option given was flying fox. So that doesn't mean that you can go and master each and every organism or animal asked in last 20-30 years. All that is actually madness, right? Understand the reality that even next year, environment and science may not be very rewarding. If that is the case, have alternative plan of action. Make sure you're great with polity, history, geography, and try your best to. And definitely with one more year of your preparation, if you haven't made it last year, this one more year of preparation, definitely your score is going to improve, right? More content, more tests, more knowledge. You are going to have witnessed at least another one question, right? Better than last year in science and environment, right? Beyond that, compensate for that in terms of strengthening other areas. All right, fine. To answer your question, to be even more specific, my only answer is, did you get these 4 questions correct in the last year? If you are able to get these 4 questions right, you are on the right track. But if you are not able to get these 4 questions right, it means your awareness from other areas, your awareness from life itself is not sufficient enough, right? So it means you have to read more, you have to listen to news more, you have to just simply get exposed to more random news more, right? And then think about it, right? Just think about how your different machines in your life actually works. These are the ways how you could have actually got these questions right, correct? Not being too bookish, not being too confined to one single source, right? So I hope I have addressed this particular question of yours. So for all those who feel that science and environment, is there a magic strategy, magic formula? No, there are no magic sources, there are no books or compilations which I would completely rely upon, that I would take the risk of even suggesting it to you. But I would actually want you to become good with spotting these questions. So train yourself. Your daily life should be trained in such a way that all these kind of issues come to your notice, right? So it's a life change, it's a lifestyle change, I would say, not a book change. How you actually get more marks in environment and science. All right. So now we'll move on to the next question. So the next question is, I have been preparing this exam for the last 2 years and not selected once. I analyzed, and this time I am giving my all, keeping all the wrongs I did so far in my mind. So the question is it okay for me to feel forgetful of what I have read? And how do I evaluate my understanding on the topic if it's not for a person for who have no peers to discuss this, right? Okay, so the gist of the question is, you're being forgetful and you're asking me, is it okay to be forgetful, right? I'll tell you why this problem arises. Because you are concerned about the facts that you're studying as a course of your preparation. You read a lot of facts, and after a month or 2 you may not be able to remember the facts. So now comes a worry, is it humane, is it human like, or is it okay to be forgetting all what you have studied in the last 1 or 2 months? I would say there is no reason to forget if you actually learn things in the right manner, right? Because I don't see any reason to mug up or memorize anything in this examination. And if you're doing it, it's because you are not exposed to the correct methods of learning a subject. I'll show you with examples, right? Look at this question number 56, asked in all these are last year's questions, okay? These are history questions, and it's history where you often tend to associate getting marks in history with your factual knowledge. And let me bust those myths. Let me tell you, it's not simply factual knowledge, but factual knowledge of what is actually asked here. It's factual knowledge of something else which will actually help you get these questions right, right? I'll tell you how. You see, question number 56. Who of the following rulers of medieval India gave permission to the Portuguese to build a fort at Batkal? All right. I have never read about this direct fact, even though I have been reading history in the last 10-15 years. I have never come across this particular fact directly, right? Let's be clear about that. But I would get this answer right. How? Portuguese came to India in 1498. It's from 1500 onwards. They slowly started spreading on the western coast of India, right, northward, correct? So all the expansion would have happened from 1500 to, let's say, 1600. 100-year span is when all the expansion would have taken place, right? What I know for sure was, when I read about the Deccan Sultans, I read that Yusuf Adil Shah went into a war against the Portuguese. Right? It was because I was really impressed when I read about the Deccan Sultan, about the Bijapur Sultanate. I could actually understand that Yusuf Adil Shah, he was able to chase the Portuguese out of Goa. The Portuguese had to anchor their ships in the seas. Rains were there. Portuguese were dying of starvation. Yusuf Adil Shah had the last laugh. He went from there, went to Bijapur back, and then he died. And that was used as an opportunity by the Portuguese to come seize Goa. Right? So I know the relationship between Yusuf Adil Shah and the Portuguese were not cordial. So I'll eliminate option D. Okay. And another aspect that I know for sure was Krishna Devaraya was the ruler in 1520. Right? So I think because I know Battle of Talikota happened in 1565, and 30-40 years it was after Krishna Devaraya's reign, Ramaraya becomes the regent, and how long would you think he could have ruled, right? So that linkage is what makes me actually understand it was in 1510, 1520, during those times it was Krishna Devaraya who was in power, right? And I know for sure that the Sangama dynasty was followed by Saluva dynasty, Saluva was followed by Tuluva dynasty, Tuluva by Aravidu, right? So Aravidu was after Battle of Talikota. That leave that aside. Okay, if Krishna Devaraya is in 1510, 1520, he was the king of the Tuluva dynasty, and it is before that Saluvas would have been even in power, right? And Saluva, as far as I know, was a very, very insignificant dynasty which ruled only for a very short span of time. Correct? So, and Saluvas had some 3 rulers. After that, it was followed by the Tuluvas. Okay, and even in the Tuluva dynasty, it was second king, I think, Krishna Devaraya. Okay, so with all this logic, I am able to place a time period that Narasimha Saluva could not have been there when the Portuguese would have slowly started expanding, right? Because Portuguese, I told you, they came to India in 1498. Their expansion only happened after 1500, slowly over to the north. And so that's what makes me place this context that definitely Saluvas would not have been there in 1500 onwards. Correct? So, and I don't even remember having read about Muhammad Shah III. Okay, and also I am aware that Krishna Devaraya was on friendly terms with the Portuguese. The reason is because he was constantly in need of horses, good horses to maintain his army against the Deccan Sultans. So he should have maintained some cordial relationship with Portuguese, right? So if you ask me, if you are mistaking me, the reason why I was able to get question number 56 right was because I exactly read about this fact. No, you're wrong. And I'm sure everybody who if you have seen YouTube videos, if they tell you that, oh, this is a fact that I have read and that's why I have got Krishna Devaraya as the right answer, I think they are trying to fool you, right? So somebody who thinks commonsensical to get this answer right cannot actually have memorized this fact. But you should understand, but the other facts about my admiration towards Krishna Devaraya, about my admiration for Yusuf Adil Shah, the way he was able to keep the Portuguese out of Goa, right? And my understanding that Krishna Devaraya was on friendly terms with Portuguese because he wanted good horses. You see, it is these awareness, it is these facts which actually help me in eliminating and getting the answer right. Right? But if only the question did not have Krishna Devaraya, and if it had something else, probably I would have left the question unattempted. I may not be able to actually differentiate. Correct? Here the balance of probability lies very much on multiple reasons. Because of multiple factors, the balance of probability lies on Krishna Devaraya. Correct? So, if you ask me, can you remember facts? Do you have to remember facts? Is it okay to be forgetful? I'll tell you, it's not okay to be forgetful of at least certain facts, certain details. I wouldn't call them as facts, I would call them as details. Right? All these details about a king's life. Once you immerse yourself, once you put yourself as an observer who was living contemporaneous with those kings, that comes only when you start relishing history, when you start admiring people, personalities, right? And how do you get that? It's only when you learn in a particular manner. Correct? So, asking me a question, is it okay to be forgetful? I would say that it's not okay to be forgetful, because I feel there is no reason for you to be forgetful. right? Because forgetting all these details, I don't think I can ever forget all these details about who is Ramaraya, when was he in power, how did he meet his end in the hands of the 3 different Deccan sultans. I don't see I would ever forget this throughout my life, correct? So I would instead put the responsibility on you, that you should learn how to learn correctly. Once you do that, there is no way why you would forget things, right? And I'll tell you how you can actually avoid forgetting things. First, understand there is a lot of garbage, noise around. Try to insulate yourself from the noise. What do I mean by noise? For example, this 55th question is a noise, right? Why would I say 55th question is a noise? Maybe for history optional students, see, when I looked at this question, I was able to only perfectly understand Chandra Ketugad is not in Odisha, it is in Bengal, right? That's the only link I have. And Inamgaon, I know it's in Maharashtra, but I was not very certain whether it's a Chalcolithic site or whether it's a Neolithic site. That fact was actually troubling me. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is, even for somebody with history optional, handling these kind of questions would be difficult, right? And if you're a general studies aspirant, if you actually encounter these areas, even when you're reading your NCRTs, if it involves memorization, just forget it. I would say that 90% of those who crack may not be able to really memorize all these details. Maybe 10% of those who crack prelims may be able to do that, but I assume 90% of you may not be able to actually do all of this, right? That is why spend time, when given an option to learn between Krishnadevaraya's life and given an option in NCRTs to learn about all these different sites, I as an aspirant would not even bother about all these Chalcolithic, Mesolithic sites just because it is asked 1 year. Or even if it is asked year after year, still I would not assume that the time is worth it, right? And it is not actually easy to get the Chandra Ketugad point correct. So some YouTuber may even point out to you and say that it is actually there in this particular NCRT. What makes you think that you will be able to remember all the details of the NCRT exactly right on the day of your exam? Not going to work out, right? That's why just avoid these areas. Minimize what you don't have to read, right? That's what I mean by, if you're able to keep your mind decluttered with all these unnecessary garbage and noise and facts and details, you'll be able to spend that energy, spend that storage space worthwhile learning about all these details which actually matters more, right? And question number 58, okay, see what I've written here is, for handling question number 58, what you need is not a factual memory, you need a experiential memory. Okay, what do I mean by that? Experiential memory. You could not have got this question number 58 right, first of all, until you would have known what is the meaning of the word parables. Okay, so English knowledge is also important. At least for non-Tamilians, they would probably look at the Hindi translation of the same question and they'll be able to figure it out. Okay, but without knowing the meaning of the word parables, you actually cannot get this answer right. Okay, so first you need to know the meaning of the word parables. So assuming that you know the meaning of the word parables, you should have actually heard of the stories that are there in the Upanishads. That is not something that could have easily come simply by reading NCRTs. You would not have got exposed to that at all, right? It's only when your faculty would have explained what is there in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, a story of a particular woman, Gargi, the way she used to discuss with another sage, Yajnavalkya, right? When those discussions would have brought to your perspective, and if your faculty would have told you that this is a discussion that happened in a particular Upanishad, so it reflects the society of that age, it shows that women were able to study texts, they were able to come to the open and discuss and debate. If your faculty would have told that, or if you yourself would have read somewhere about all of this, it just remains in your memory. This is not something that I have to memorize that, oh, there are stories in Upanishads. That is not the way to actually get this question right. This is got through a good learning experience by things being brought to your attention about the nature of stories, the nature of discussions, the nature of discussions. Basically, Upanishads are conversations between a guru and a disciple, right? That's the way the entire Upanishads are written, correct? So if you would have been given some hint of all of this, you could have actually got the option number 1 right. Okay, so I have never read this single fact that there are stories in Upanishads anywhere. but it's by using my memory, it's by using my feelings that using my awareness that there are such kind of anecdotes, right? Oh yeah, Gargi story I have read somewhere, just that, getting option number 1 right. Okay, and option number 2, it's pretty easy. You need to know a time sense. You need to know why Puranic Hinduism came and what is the accomplishment of Puranic Hinduism, creating all the avatars for Vishnu, which led to further development of pilgrimage sites, which led to further development of temple building activities. All of these happened only in the common era period, right? But Upanishads belong to long back. It was during the time of Buddhism. Buddhism, Jainism, Upanishads, these are all questions, these are all revolutionary thoughts against the Vedic traditions. So I know Upanishads were earlier, Puranas were later. Easy to get this question right, right? So for your question as to is it okay to be forgetful, my only doubt that I get when I read your question is, why should you even forget? When you read things the correct way, when you learn things in an interesting way, there is no reason for you to forget things. Whereas if you start taking up a book, memorizing things, some coaching academies compilations on history, you take it, start memorizing, you're going wrong, you're doing things wrong. In my opinion, the reason why you would forget things is because of certain problems. What are those problems? When you start doing desperate reading, compulsive reading, because you artificially fix that in the next 5 days I must complete old NCRTs of ancient India. Why do you fix time? When you fix time, what happens is you are more concerned about completion, not about ingestion. You simply want to make sure your eyes fall on each and every page. You're not enjoying the subject, you're not absorbing things inside. That's why when people ask me this question, how long would it take to prepare for this exam? It depends on person to person. The right question they should ask is, how do I actually make sure my 2 or 3 years of preparation that I am going to invest, how do I make it interesting to me? Instead of that, most aspirants, their first question is, how long this process? Well, that's not something that anybody can decide, right? So understand, when you force yourself to read, when you force yourself to complete just because your friend has completed your book, or just because you have made your artificial timetable, or some other website or some YouTuber has given you some schedule to follow, and because of that you are now under pressure to perform, pressure to read, that's not learning, correct? So when you do that desperate reading, right, no connections are formed. You only need Krishna Devaraya 4 points, correct? And those 4 are useless points which could not come to your rescue for handling a question like what I have done. Okay, you need to form those connections. Okay, you need to sit, you need to read, sit alone, think on those aspects, right? Read less, think more, write the best, write more and more. This is how you crack this examination. Whatever you read, think, summarize in your mind so as to frame connections. It is these connections that will help you crack this exam, and not just those data and the details. Connections help in remembrance. Okay, once connected properly, you will never forget things for life, right? And let me tell you, there is a lot of worry that I can actually sense in this particular question. And if you're really worried about it, you will be doing all these activities. So don't be worried. If you're worried, you will start feeling that reading more and more material, reading more and more books is becoming so painful. There is no inquisitiveness, there is no curiosity, there is no classes which can actually address these aspects. You have to realize this, and this can only come when you start becoming slightly fearless, when you start accepting the reality that it may take some more time. I understand that since you've been preparing for 2 years, now there is a kind of mental pressure that builds in you. But realize reality is different from what you actually want it to be, right? Once you start accepting reality, your fear will start going away. Once you start letting go of your fear, you will do what it actually takes to really enjoy and learn and be a part of this interesting journey, right? You make your journey interesting, automatically this entire fear will go away. You will not forget things. And my principle is easy. If I am forgetting certain things, it means that those things have not made any impact on me, and I really don't even care about those things. Okay, things that make an impact you will never forget, and it is those impacting aspects which will actually be asked in the examination, right? So avoid learning things which is putting a burden on your brain, like memorizing facts just because every year there's a question asked on Paleolithic, Chalcolithic, Mesolithic sites. It's no guarantee that even despite whatever you may read this year, you would be able to get a question right in the next year, right? But instead, learn the interesting aspects of storylines of history. There is just so much of joy you get, so much of connections that you make, so much of memory that retains on the day of your examination, right? Go on this path. All right, so let's move on to the next question. I am going to give my first attempt. How can I analyze that if I am going in the correct path with subject wise mock test score and CSAT score? How to maximize the use of Hindu for prelims? How to jot down key data from it precisely? Will it be useful for prelims? Okay, these are actually two questions which I have merged as a single question, right? And let me address an answer for this particular question. So to answer your question, since it's your first attempt, I understand you may not really know what is UPSC standard, right? So it's only when you give your first prelims this time, you would be given a reality check of whether your preparation was all in the right direction or not. But until then, can I give some value advice to you? Yes, I can. I'll just tell you something. Always make sure when you give your tests, understand where are you able to score your marks. Is it always from the easiest areas that you are scoring marks? When I say easiest, what I'm saying is it only from the basic NCRTs and the Lakshmikant kind of knowledge which is giving you correct answers? Because the question papers are also of different quality across different institutes, right? So the simplest and the easiest questions will also be asked in your UPSC prelims as well. I'm not denying that. It is necessary that you should be getting those easiest questions right, but always keep an eye and keep on checking yourself. Is it only the easiest questions which are always giving you marks, or are there scores that you're able to score even out of the moderate and the difficult questions as well? Okay, and always develop this healthy habit of not enjoying the scores, not positively viewing the scores that you get out of random attempts, right? Don't tell me that you are able to eliminate 4 options, you were stuck with 2, and without any mindless logic you just went for one particular option because somebody had coached you into believing that option B is always a right option than option A. Don't use such stupid logic, right? But if you tell me, so there is an English meaning which actually corresponds to the option 1, right, then I can accept it, right? So like that, make an observation as to, for questions which are asked beyond your textbooks, are you in a position to get them right or wrong? Okay, are you continuously getting exposed and aware widely beyond your textbooks or not? So these are aspects also which have to be checked when you give your tests. Your scores that you get them right should not only come from bookish areas alone. The scores that you get should also be as a result of your ability to play with the question, your ability to arrive at some meaningful logic and inference, not blind guesses. I'm not rewarding blind guesses here, right? So the way I have explained the first 2 queries, even out of that you can get some skills, right? The way I only choose a particular question where the English meaning can actually work out and which can help me in getting the answers right. That could be one nature of questions. If you are getting such kind of questions right, you are on the right track. Okay, and from the question papers, now after you make a mistake, if similar questions are asked in the upcoming tests, if you are able to get those questions right, it means you're going in the right track. I'm not saying the same fact is asked in a different test question, I was able to get it right. No, I'm saying if a question has given you exposure about Krishna Devaraya, and in the subsequent test some other aspect of Krishna Devaraya was asked, and if you were able to get those questions right, it means that your preparation is becoming very comprehensive as soon as you get exposed to an area that you are not aware of, right? Now that is brought to you in the form of a test question, and once that is brought to you, now you are ensuring that you are preparing everything around that. That translates into a better performance in the upcoming test question. You know, it means that you're going in the right direction. Correct? So I would say that just because you have read a compilation of a coaching academy and that question is now asked as a question in a test series and you have got it right, please don't be happy about it. The reason is because many of the times the people who sets the questions, they were the ones who would have read from the same compilation and they would have set questions, right? So just having reflections from what you have read from compilations in a test is no indicator of you going in the right track. Okay, so over time when you give 10 tests, 20 tests, you will find that this is becoming a unique strategy for you, your unique strategy where you're able to identify English based questions correctly. Okay, so some kind of instinct based approach will develop inside you. So be watchful if a strategy is actually developing in place in the long term. A strategy of making a mistake, reading everything, covering whatever areas were uncovered in the previous test. Now with more coverage you are able to perform better in the upcoming test. This is a strategy. This is a strategy for improvement. I am not only talking about strategy on the exam hall, right? A strategy which betters you with test after test. If that's all happening, it means that you are going in the right direction. See, I was able to crack this exam in the first attempt, and when I was giving my first attempt as well, I have all these queries, but my indicators were very simple. If I really enjoy reading something, that's the best indicator that I'm going in the right direction. And when it comes to tests, I always go for the most difficult questions, right? Questions which really tickle my brain, which really make me wonder and think. Such kind of questions are what I'll hunt for. And if I know a particular academy has all the difficult questions, I'll just keep on going and getting those question papers, right? Simply assuring myself from easy questions again and again, I don't see any value of doing that. Okay, if you're able to get 60 to 70% of the easy questions asked in the tests right, now is the time to start thinking about, don't be contented with this scores alone, start thinking about the other type of questions as well. And as I told you, prepare for that. Similar questions asked in the upcoming test, if you're getting it right, pat on your back, you're going in the right direction. Alright, so that is what will ensure the outcomes will be repeatable. Instead of doing that, you simply say, sir, my coach told me option B is always the right option compared to option A. It's not a repeatable outcome. It may repeat in your coach test series, but not on the day of your UPSC examination. Alright, and when it comes to the question on Hindu, how do you maximize the use of Hindu for prelims? Well, as I told you, I even learnt about lift irrigation from a government ad. Okay, there is no one way of answering how Hindu can be used in prelims, but I can say how Hindu will not be useful in your prelims. Simply taking a note of every fact that comes in editorials, building a notebook is the first waste of time that you can do for prelims. Okay, do not build notes for prelims, number one. You can read anything that you want. Everything will turn out to be useful one day or the other. Okay, but mindlessly making notes, compulsively making notes, just because somebody has asked you to make one-page notes, one-line notes on every topic, what is the guarantee out of the 4 options given, all 4 options on that particular topic, you would have ensured that notes were made for that, right? Don't make notes. If you want notes, I'm sure every YouTube channel that analyzes Hindu newspaper would all give an attachment of the PDF. Just go through that. They have more notes, better notes than yours, right? So, if you ask me how can I make use of Hindu paper in so many different ways, okay, it requires a totally different session, a demonstration of mine to actually show you how Hindu paper can be made use for your prelims. But I can actually tell you how you will end up wasting time on Hindu and making it not useful for your prelims. The first is mindlessly making notes on everything that comes. But instead of making notes, why don't you simply browse about it for 5 minutes, spend some time on that, learn things, get to know about it more and more. Okay, if you're genuinely curious, you would not be contented simply with copying that from Hindu paper and making a notes and keeping it and storing it. If you're genuinely curious, you would have browsed about it on your own. I have never made any notes during my days of preparation for anything that comes in Hindu. But every day I used to make a lot of notes for mains, and that started happening after I understood what mains was actually all about, right? So that will be dealt in a different session. But for now, I'll tell you, you don't have to make any notes from Hindu paper, but read it, be curious, browse it. Anything that comes in world news page, just get to know about it spatially. Where is it all located? Just repetitions of browsing, repetitions of exposure. That is all that you need. So in my opinion, Hindu newspaper is the best way to keep you repeating things. That's all. Repeat from Hindu paper. You would have ensured the best utilization of Hindu for your prelims. Alright. So we'll move on to the next question. I am unsure about myself, whether should I give this attempt or should I wait till I am confident enough. Many confusions. I read every now and then, I try to recall, everything is like confusing me. I am not confident enough to say I am ready to face the exam. It means you are not ready. Okay. Never for a moment did I ever doubt whether I was ready for the exam or not, because I feel I am getting ready, because I was doing my work every day and nothing stopped me from doing the work. Because as I told you, see, You can also reach that stage. You will reach it once you understand how joyful and enjoyable this preparation process is. It is to develop that interest in this preparation. I would repeat certain things again and again, that this exam process takes time, that do it the hard way, read things, learn things genuinely instead of knowing only the surface knowledge just for the surface sake of, after all, the civil service examination, right? When you do all of that, you will never doubt your capacity to crack this exam. You will never even think, am I ready? You feel that civil service exam is just another one more area for you to test yourself. You know, all those who crack prelims would approach prelims in this mindset that okay, I've been doing great with so many tests, I've been getting to know a lot of things new, and I feel I've been better than what I was in the previous test. So let me go and have a final test on the day of UPSC. You know, the need to be tested is what needs to be there. Okay, there is nothing called as, I don't know what does it even mean to be ready for this examination in different phases. All right. So and I would never say that somebody can never learn these tricks and techniques of how to crack prelims. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm simply trying to say, maybe you have to reevaluate your learning methodologies. Okay, if your learning methodologies are in place, if they are proper, if they are not stressful, if they are really pleasant, if they really keep you occupied, if they really keep you engaged, engrossed, okay, you do not really have the time to even be worried about these anxieties, right? That's why I've written here, there's no remedy or shortcut in the next 2 months. If you doubt, okay, if you're not able to think the way I have thought in the last 40 minutes when I was discussing all these questions, it means you're not ready. Okay, so take one more year. All right, there is just no other answer for this question. Okay, and I am someone who really believes that skipping attempts is really worth it. When you skip it, what it's basically Gandhian strategy. What does Gandhi do? Gandhi calls for a revolution. He mobilizes the masses, but now and then periodically he puts an end to it. He doesn't continue with a failing attempt, right? Gandhi takes time to heal, to recuperate, to allow the masses to recover their energies back. Similarly, for me also, I feel, and why would Gandhi do that? Because Gandhi doesn't want the people to finally lose their entire motivation because of the failures, right? Gandhi would want, he understands people will quit once they are not able to see results. So he doesn't want people to quit. Similarly, I wouldn't want you to quit. And even taking a year's break will ensure you still you are in the race. You are not quitting the game altogether, right? If you feel that you're not ready, it means you're not ready. Just take one more year, right? And learn what all to be done in the next 1 year in the right manner. That is more important. All right. So, coming to the last question for the session, I am not able to increase my mark. It's just hovering around 56. I think question paper based study is better. You are doing it wrong. Okay, if you say I'm doing great job with respect to my books, whatever is asked from my NCRTs, I'm able to get it all right, and now I feel I need to stretch it beyond that, so let me now do question paper study, I would say that yes, you're good to go. But the way you have worded your concern, it feels like you're seeking an alternative to your books. It seems like you're running away from your problem. You feel that your scores are not increasing beyond 56. So if that is the case, let me go to question papers. The problem with question paper study is that it minimizes your learning only to whatever is asked in your test series. And let me tell you, except for polity, maybe some parts of map places in news, okay, and some basic concepts of economy, basic NCRT level concepts of geography. Apart from that, I don't see any of the question papers will be useful in anticipating the nature of questions that will be asked in your real prelims. So going to question paper and doing a question paper based study will only be minimally helpful in tackling these subjects alone. I don't see any great rewards coming to you in sharpening your overall competencies just with question paper based study, right? But if you are someone who has got saturated with books, if you are somebody who has finished all the books perfectly, and perfectly means not just factual memorization, as I said, interlinkages, if you have enjoyed the book, if you have really understood what the writer is trying to convey to you, correct? If you have crossed that threshold, then it would be a better deal to go to question papers and make a study preparation based on handling questions, because that is what everybody does. right? But if you're running away from your textbooks, if you feel that I'm lost, I feel lost, I don't know where to start from a textbook, where to complete it, whatever I read from textbook, I'm not able to retain it, so hence let me go to question papers. That's a wrong strategy. You'll end up failing in this prelims, right? So look into the root causes, go to the core and find out why are you running away from the textbooks. Okay, why is your score not increasing beyond 56? Okay, and what is your assumption that question paper study is going to fill in this gap, right? Who knows, maybe one round of lectures of whatever subjects you are weak at, maybe that could be the gap filling measure. Maybe you are yet to find the right person to teach you those 20-30 lectures on every topic. Find out, seek for that person. Okay, because question papers, they may help you get exposed to newer areas, but my doubt is, if you are somebody who is running away from textbooks, what is the guarantee that you know what to do with the question papers? Because after all, what you will end up doing is, you solve a question, you make mistakes, you go to the answer key, you will look into the answer key and find out, memorize the answers for those 4 options, and that is going to be once again a path towards failure. The same problems that is preventing you from mastering your textbooks will also be the problems that will be hindering your progress with question exposures and further reading based on the question as well, right? So unless you understand and rectify the root problems, right, it could be a problem of understanding and linkages, right? You may have only read 1 or 2 readings of your textbooks. That fine linkage across all topics are yet to be formed. Okay, who knows? That's what I'm telling you. Lectures can probably help you form. I'm not saying lectures is going to be the only way. You have to be the best judge of what your problem is, and then start addressing it. Okay, without addressing, going for a new formula is not the solution here. That is what I'm trying to point out. And also, do not have this excessive reliance on question papers in the sense of previous year's questions, because I see a lot of that becoming a fashion in YouTube these days, right? All PYQs discussed. What is the point of that? UPSC's questions, many a years, all the important questions, the moderate and the difficult questions, they are not at all the repetitions of previous year's questions, and that is exactly where students would go wrong. And those moderate and difficult questions are the best differentiating questions of UPSC, which I don't see many coaching centers will be able to replicate similar questions at all. Most coaching centers will only be able to replicate the easy and the moderate questions, not the moderate and the difficult questions. But what do I mean by the difficult question is, not simply because it is asked outside your textbooks. That's not the reason why I would classify a question as difficult. It could simply be from your NCRTs, but it could be from an area that you wouldn't have looked in a particular way, right? That is why, let's say in my Telegram channel, in the last video that I have posted 2 questions on history, right? But you see, only 50% of the aspirants have got the questions right, and those questions are simply from your spectrum. They are nowhere else. But it is asked in such a way that it might mislead you into you may not have read Rash Behari Bose in the context of Indian National Army, right? You may not have read Shyamji Krishna Verma in terms of the newspaper Indian Sociologist that he had started. You may have only known Shyamji Krishna Verma in the context of him starting India House, right? So which means that there is much more to do with books itself. There is much more to do with people pointing out to you that these are all areas that you have to read and master, correct? So my concern here is, I'm not blaming, I'm not saying that question paper based study is incorrect. It's a very good strategy, but why are you doing that? Is it because of your fear of reading books? Are you hoping that this is a shortcut? Are you hoping that this is going to be less burdensome on you? With less preparation you will be able to go and probably crack prelims just by doing this? If that is the case, then you have to re-evaluate, you have to rethink your strategy. That is all that I'm saying, right? Instead, read a material. Let's say you read Revolutionary Terrorism from Spectrum, right? Now you attempt questions. That's what you want to do, right? Attempt questions on this particular theme alone. See how you fare. Okay, how are you performing? Understand where your weak areas are. Now either you go to books or you watch lectures on select areas alone. Master those areas more and more. Now take another test series on similar topics, solve them right. The reason why I'm asking you to solve the second test series is not to simply know more areas to read, but to find out what you have read, is it useful or not? what you have read. Have you read it in such a way that you're able to remember it to get the next set of questions right or wrong? Correct? This is the best way to have a question paper based study. Reading unfamiliar areas, not giving up on textbooks, attempting questions, now coming and equipping yourself more from the gaps that you are able to identify from the questions you have attempted. And now, once you're confident the gaps have been filled, go back, attempt the second test series, master like this, become more and more confident, feel that books are not something to be shelved, right? Question papers are going to simply supplement your bookish reading. Okay, question papers are not the holy grail for cracking this exam, and especially PYQs are simply directions to proceed. They are not the sole areas to master for upcoming years. All right. So with this, we will wind up our lecture, and more questions are around the corner. Okay, more questions will be answered in the upcoming years. Upcoming days. And if you have more doubts, queries that you would like me to clarify, you can actually drop your messages in the Google form that I will be attaching below in the description box, right? So that can give me more pool of questions to think upon and give you answers. All right. So thank you for watching this. We'll meet in the next video then.